Hey fellow Fulmer friends, Killer B here with another video on understanding railroads. Today's topic is one that I have not seen anywhere else on YouTube, so this should be the only place you will see this. What do you need to know? What are tips and thoughts if you wanted to start up your own short line railroad? What do you need to know when you go to a Class 1 and have a conversation with them? At one time, I was on the Class 1 side listening to potential short lines give us a pitch. So I kind of heard what works and what doesn't. So from the perspective of a Class 1 railroad, what do you need to know? Now, let me say right away, your chances of being successful are minimal. But still, it does happen. We leased a few lines out to startup parties that were unknown to us. What swayed us was their pitch to us, and a little faith on our part. So let's get started and discuss some points you'll have to consider. Oh, one other thing to mention off the bat here. My Class 1 spun off very few lines. We were not like others who on occasion would put a big gob of lines out on the market. So we would get entities contacting us all the time with the generic question, "Hey, do you have any lines you're looking to spin off?" Our answer was always no, because we didn't have time to discuss hypotheticals. However, if someone came to us with an unsolicited bid for a specific line segment with a well thought out proposal, we would at least look at it and give it consideration. So the quality and focus of the proposal was crucial. When we did have a line to put out to bid, there was a specific reason. If we were indifferent who operated it, sometimes we would invite several known entities to review the line and submit a proposal. And sometimes we would just go to one entity if they had the right synergy to be the operator, such as their line being in close proximity to an already existing operation of theirs. Another scenario is sometimes one of our industries wanted to have a contract switcher brought in, but they didn't know the players and would come to us for suggestions. They also desired to know what potential operators we would work well with. So getting started, and in no particular order of importance, is the decision of whether to own versus lease the line. Now, the Class 1 might make that decision for you. There are pros and cons for both parties, for both options. To a fledgling short line, leasing a line obviously saves you a huge capital expense up front, but you risk the uncertainty of it not ultimately being yours, and the Class 1 possibly taking it back, which has happened. With the purchase of a line, you now have absolute certainty of knowing you control it, but there is that large capital expense. And don't think the Class 1 will sell you the line for $1. If the line is fully depreciated, they might consider it. But if the line still has a book value, they might feel a need to recover it so the sale doesn't create a book loss, even though it is a cash positive transaction to them. At a minimum, lines are usually sold for NLV, net liquidation value. That is, what is the value of the line if it was torn up and sold for scrap? It is the net of the sale proceeds of the scrap minus the expense to dismantle and dispose of it. The reasoning is, say they sell it to you for $1. You could be unscrupulous and turn around and rip it up and sell the scrap and turn a profit. So the Class 1 doesn't want to leave any money on the table that could have been theirs. Also, are you going to be handling hazardous materials? If you lease the line and have a serious incident, the Class 1 could be liable too, being as they would be the line's underlying owner, plus also having deeper pockets. They just might want to sell it to you and make a clean break. Assuming you are taking over trackage from a Class 1, you will be a regulated railroad, a common carrier, under the purview of the Surface Transportation Board, or STB. This is the federal agency that licenses rail carrier entry and exiting. You will need to file with them to be granted a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. And best to secure legal representation that specializes in such filings. You will need to secure reporting marks, your initials that identify you, from the AAR, the Association of American Railroads. Well, actually from their subsidiary RailLink. Speaking of, they put out a nice guide to many of the tasks you'll have to do on your path to becoming a railroad. The FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, will also exercise oversight, mostly operational. You'll have to have your train crews certified. Additional crafts are now under consideration for certification requirements too. Going back to the STB, be aware that there is one category of track they have no jurisdiction over: private track. This is track used exclusively by the track's owner for the movement of its own goods, such as a steel mill or any industry that does its own switching on its own plant trackage. Private track operators are not railroads and do not fall under STB regulation. If you acquire regulated railroad track and want to convert it to private track, it will first have to be formally abandoned and the abandonment consummated, thus removing it from STB oversight. How you interact electronically with your partner Class 1 and other connections will have to be decided up front. Are you going to be a handling line or an ISS carrier? That is, interline settlement system. This determines how you get paid for handling cars, and if you in turn have to pay others. If you are a handling line for your partner Class 1, you can think of yourself basically as being a contract operator for them. Kind of like the feeder airline concept, like American Eagle and American Airlines, for example. You collect a per car fee. You most likely will not have to worry about negotiating rates with your customers, or publishing the price documents to cover each move, or being responsible for collecting and distributing payments for the business you originate. You might not show in the waybill route, and your connecting Class 1 will show as serving your stations. It is a lot less administration and expense, but you have no control over how much you get paid once you and your Class 1 partner negotiate the amount. A handling line carrier is also known as a junction settlement road in accounting jargon. ISS is the accepted method by which the rail industry settles freight revenues via EDI, electronic data interchange, when two or more railroads handle a shipment. ISS gives you control over your desired revenue, but it comes with much greater expense and administration. This may all have your head spinning, but being prepared to discuss it up front will give you credibility with the Class 1. The big elephant in the room we always faced with a short line wannabe was, who is going to pay for your service? You are a new and additional expense in the supply chain, which is not a popular thing. Let's say you want $600 a car. Do not count on the Class 1 simply reducing their portion of the rate $600 and calling it a wash. In many cases, the Class 1's cost per car to operate the line you are negotiating over may be less than what you want. Say you want $600. Say the Class 1 is currently doing it for $450. Say you are a handling line. Why would they turn the line over to you and incur an additional $150 per car? This quick and simple exercise is how we weeded out candidates. One idea we often heard proposed was, we'll bill the customers for our services. Well, perfect, if the customers agree. Let's say they have their own trackmobile to do their own switching, and you can relieve them of that expense by providing more frequent service than their Class 1 is providing them now. Great! Or give them additional switch frequency, allowing them to unload cars faster and reduce their demurrage bill. Fantastic! But if you aren't providing them a quantifiable cost savings for your new presence, why would they pay you for something they aren't paying for now? Potential operators would always try to use the expense reduction card on us. They would say, "But we are replacing your crew, so you will realize cost savings." Again, maybe. Sometimes the Class 1 crew is also doing other work, and eliminating this work does not allow the complete elimination of the crew. In fact, it causes an issue. What now to do with the dead time in their shift? The big question is, what do the marketing people that are responsible for the rates have to say? Are they willing to reduce their rate by $600 a car, in this example, so the shipper is indifferent? It depends on how well they understand their costing system. If the costing system algorithm doesn't recognize $600 worth of savings, let's say it only recognizes $300, then you just put the marketing manager $300 a car in the hole. Undoubtedly, when the rate comes up for renewal, they will raise it to make up the $300 shortfall. Now you risk losing the business due to a steep rate hike. So this is a topic you have to think long and hard about. Complicating things is each different commodity has a different marketing manager to deal with, and each of them will probably see things differently. So, how to win the Class 1 over? Simply, what can you do that we cannot do now? Or what can you do better? Our position was something had to change other than the color of the engine. We once listened to an unsolicited offer and spun a branch line off to an operator we were not familiar with, but who had a compelling business plan. The line had a grain elevator that was a 25-car load out. The elevator wanted to load 100-car trains, and we wanted them also to load 100-car trains. But they would have had to use our main line for headroom and car storage, which was a non-starter for our operations people. And we weren't going to keep our crew there to facilitate the loading process. The potential short line said they would make it happen. So we rolled the dice and went with them. In another case, operations was cutting service on an industrial spur from 5 days a week to either 2 or 3, I can't remember. We couldn't make it up by spotting more cars on the day we did serve them because all the industries only had a several car spot. We simply would have lost that business. We invited several candidates to bid who had to commit not only to providing 5-day-a-week service, but double spots in the event any given day ran heavy. In another case, we handpicked an operator to revitalize an inactive branch line with a 100-car grain elevator on the end of it. They exceeded expectations by also offering to index the grain train themselves while loading, negating the need for the elevator to do it at their expense, making it a win-win-win. So, what is your wow factor? What can you do that we can't? Maybe the extra value you provide or additional carloads you generate are worth it for us to pay a higher per car charge than we want to. Convince us. This is just the start of many things to consider. I have a feeling there may be a sequel, especially if people comment and raise topics on areas I didn't cover. So for now, I'll leave you to chew on all of this. And oh yes, of course, as always, please subscribe so that you'll know when more to come comes. Thank you for watching.